Hi there, it's Riikka Kovasin here with some cards for Wow embossing powder. This time I'm imitating resin with embossing powders. In my first monthly project I played with translucent powders, and with these techniques it's also important to use translucent powders. That's because of the base, because the opaque powders always have some white powder in them, and as we're making layers with the powders, so heating them over and over again, those white powders in the opaque versions might get activated. So in the end, you're not going to get what you asked for. So if you use translucent powders, you are better in the know of getting what you want. So I'm making 3 to 4 layers to each piece. These all are cut using a C6 die from coasters. I'm using a selection of 3 powders for each, called Blue Tang, Parma Violet and Lagoon. The first stage in all of these techniques is the same, building embossing powder layers. For that I'm using the Wow embossing ink and then repeating the embossing a couple of times. When I have enough layer thickness, then it's time to do different things. For this first one I'm going for a marble kind of look. So I'm adding bright white and gold rich powders on top, both with the ultra high, melting them, and then I'm using a toothpick or cocktail stick to kind of move those powders around, making that marble effect. Here's the next version. As you can see, I've already done the colored layers, and now I'm melting the ultra high powders on top. While the powders are still hot, so they are molten, I'm adding a dried flower on top. To have that kind of resin look to it, I add Wow embossing ink and then clear gloss powder on top. Then the third version. Again, the colored layers are already done. I'm adding a coat of clear gloss powder. While that powder is still hot and molten, I'm sprinkling some Your Carriage Await sparkles on top. So I'm adding some glitter to it. I'm also adding some star-shaped sequins and adding a couple of clear gloss layers on top. When you're adding glitter or sequins to the project, remember that they need to be heat resistant, otherwise they start to melt when you're heating the powder. Then a fourth idea. I'm inking an embossing folder, so it's ready. Then I melt the colored layers that are already on top of the circle and press the embossing folder on top. As I've added the embossing ink to my folder, then I'm able to emboss just those patterns that are then pressed to the button. I'm adding gold rich powder to them. To get the same effect as the other buttons, which are quite high, I added a layer of clear gloss to the button. Then I treat the edges using a golden wax. Naturally, you can use a paint or even a paint marker, but I felt that using wax was really easy. Then it's time to turn these little buttons into cards. I cut a regular card base in half, just to have a little base for the focal points. Then I added some old book paper on top, some washi tape, kind of making those little layers to mount my button to the card. I'm also adding some golden embossing powder to the background, kind of tying every layer together. Before adding the button on top, I add a little bit of white string, tie it around the card, and then use a foam tape to adhere my button in place. Then I repeat it to all of the cards. I added some watercolor splashes and then used just some half burrs to finish the cards. Here you can see the finished set of the 4. And here's some close-ups from the buttons and other layers. Thank you for watching. I hope you consider subscribing, and I'll see you again. Bye bye!